Welcome, Facebook friends and family, to this week's Bible Topics discussion. We're continuing our series with part 5 of spiritual gifts and the final part of the series. You may have noticed that 1 Corinthians 13 is wedged oddly in there between chapters 12 and 14, which speak largely about spiritual gifts. But chapter 13 speaks largely about love, even being called the love chapter by many people. You may be most familiar with it because it's included in many wedding ceremonies.
But do you know the reason it's wedged between two chapters that are mostly about spiritual gifts? Well, Paul gives us the reason right off the bat. As he's coming off of chapter 12, right there at the end, he says, "And I show you a still more excellent way." That more excellent way had to do with love. In chapter 13, verse 1, he says, "If I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but do not have love, I have become a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and know all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing."
Have you ever heard a gong or a cymbal? I've heard both. And when they're not played correctly, or just willy-nilly, it's a most irritating sound. But when played properly, it's a pleasant addition to the song being played. So when using our spiritual gifts, we should, like the drummer, do it properly. And Paul says the proper way to do it is with love. As Christians, one of the traits that should shine through us is the love of Jesus Christ.
What Paul is saying here is that you may have all kinds of spiritual gifts, but if you don't use them in love toward people, you're just making noise. You may have one of the greater gifts, as Paul says, but if you're going about with a holier-than-thou attitude about it, God is not impressed, and people aren't going to think well of you. You may say, "I don't care what people think," but as Paul says back in Romans 12, verse 3, we shouldn't think more highly of ourselves than we ought to. He then goes on to talk about spiritual gifts and how we're all members of one body.
We don't want to do anything to destroy our Christian testimony. People are watching. Whether you see them or not, so far as caring what people think of us, we should care because we're supposed to be portraying Jesus Christ to others. We have to care if they see Him in us and in our actions. He says that we're the light of the world, meaning we're supposed to be shining His light to the world. So in order to be obedient to Jesus, we need to care what people think of our actions, our words, and how we present ourselves. As far as caring what people think of us in that we're trying to please them, no. That shouldn't even figure into our lives. As humans, that can be hard. As Christians, it shouldn't matter to us.
The Bible says in Colossians chapter 3, verse 23, that we should do everything we do as for the Lord rather than for men. Jesus wants us to be humble in every area of our lives, but where spiritual gifts are concerned, I would say He wants us to have a double dose of humility. The last verse in chapter 13 says, "But now faith, hope, love, abide these three, but the greatest of these is love." Jesus talks a whole lot about love in the Bible. It's very important to Him that we love each other.
Well, that's it for today's discussion. We hope you enjoyed it and will like, comment, and share. Always remember that you can private message us with questions. Or if you want to, you can ask a question in the comments section below and we'll answer it there. See you next week. Be blessed.